Shit, you know what I'm saying? Like, just some social shit for everyone, you know what I'm saying? Like, I made this be myself, so hit me. Woo! I mean, like, we can pull that clown shit away. There's some real shit for you. I'm spazzing right now, so listen, let's go. Yeah. It's in their bones, the thugs in harmony for the love of the money. Then fall victim for the cookie, then turn pussy, it's lonely. You said you hold it down when life get rough, we're here now, so show me. We move them losses to them wins. Heavy pounds, we make it ends meet. Converse with only few who make me feel like I be 10 feet.
What's going on, people, man? It's G. We're back in the building. Guys, please make sure, of course, as always, man, make sure you're smashing that like. We are on the road to 1,500 subscribers. Big up to everybody, by the way. I know I don't say it enough, but big up to everybody who has subscribed to the channel. Much appreciated, man. Much love as always. So yeah, man, if you haven't done so already, just like the rest of the guys, man, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So much more content, man. So much more content. And of course, make sure you head on over to Keeping It GTV as well. You know, we've got some good content, some fun stuff. Yeah, I mean, everything lighthearted and some serious conversations popping on over that side. So Gareth Southgate. Yeah, I mean, man, Gareth Southgate, man, you know why we're here. You can see the caption. Everyone's talking about it now. Euro final done and dusted. Euros is finished. You know, England, unfortunately, weren't able to, you know, get the victory that everybody, well, not everybody, but, you know, some people did maybe assumed prior to the tournament that, you know what, England's got the best team and etc., etc. They should really be walking away with that trophy. But unfortunately, the best team in the tournament won, and that was Spain. Off the back of that, Gareth Southgate has now decided to step down from his role at England. I mean, just on that, you know, in itself, I think it's really about time. If I'm being totally honest with you, you know, I've not enjoyed really watching England. If I'm being, I mean, for a long time, I hadn't really enjoyed watching England. So let me not even just put that on Southgate. You know what I mean? That's not just a Southgate thing. It's been an England thing for a very, very long time. You know, what I would say he's probably done, and obviously, it's probably one thing that everyone talks about the most, is the fact that he's probably been able to, that kind of disconnect that people did have. Of course, you know, you remember England getting knocked out by Iceland, you know what I mean? Euro 2016, I believe. You know, dark times, man. So, you know, from there till now, you know, you can kind of see maybe that connection in terms of with players and stuff like that. Maybe that's probably come back. Obviously, unfortunately, we live in an era now, so, you know, society in general, the way that social media has kind of moved on and forward, we now live in a space where it's almost like, you know, player FC. Do you know what I mean? So your favorite player, you know, obviously everyone's got their kind of favorite players, and everyone wants their favorite player to do well, wants them to always be starting, be playing and stuff like that. But I feel like that's kind of the ugly era of social media right now within the context of football, right? So that's crept in. That's crept in. And I felt like Euros, what I wanted from like the Euros and the Copa America, like, is I just wanted that to be put all to the side for a second. Do you know what I mean? I don't care about the club football. Club football's not on right now. But for some reason, everyone did care. And, you know, it was always about, well, this player should then be starting, you know, in my team. You know, why isn't he starting? Why isn't he playing this position? Or, you know, this player should be playing ahead of that player because of what he done at club level and this, that, and the third. And it was too much club level talk, man. And it just wasn't really enough about, you know, the players that we're just seeing. You know, some players at the Euros who surprised me. You know, something like, if we went by social media, Cucurella shouldn't even be anywhere near that Spain team. Guess what? He was probably the best fullback, in my opinion, in the entire tournament. You know, had won the tournament. You know, he played really well, really consistent, you know, high levels of performances that he was putting in. And that's just where I feel like, you know, we got people battling Cole Palmer should be playing instead of Bukayo Saka. Like, it's too much of that, man. It's too much of that, you know, because we're not like... ultimately, we're not talking about like bummy players, you know, so to speak, especially when we're talking about, you know, in reference to England. So the fact that people were so, oh yeah, this guy's got to do this and that was always killing it, man. And that's probably why I'd never really enjoyed the tournaments, because I wasn't allowed to really enjoy the tournament. You know, it wasn't about the tournament. It was about, you know, this player from Arsenal or this player from Man City, Chelsea. Oh, we're not in a Chelsea team, and we're not in a City team, for example. And too much of that, man. Too much of that. But as I said, obviously Southgate is now left, and obviously the question now remains is who next for England. I've seen like bookies odds and stuff like that. There's like a few managers that have been, you know, touted potentially, you know, for the job. One of the managers who has been touted at this current moment in time is Eddie Howe, Newcastle manager. Do I think it'll be a good option? Yeah, I think, and I'm going to talk more about like the options in a general sense. We're just going to go through the options first, but yeah, I think it'll be a calm option. I think it's a good. If people are trying to just purely go down the English way, should I say anyway, there's not many options anyway. If I'm being honest with you, I mean, you could potentially throw in the Steven Gerrards potentially of this world, Frank Lampard's. I don't really know, So Eddie Howe for me is easily the best out of the English managers. I think that's no competition there. Done really well with Newcastle, getting them into Champions League last season. Not so good, but, still kept up a consistent enough level, do you know what I mean? And of course, we'll see how he really does. If he does stay, we'll see how he does with Newcastle, this season coming, or this upcoming season, should I say. But yeah, I think he's a calm manager, plays decent football. Um, yeah, there's nothing really. I don't have like a major problem, with someone like an Eddie Howe taking up the reins. Someone like an Eddie Howe, taking that job. I think, especially with the work that he done when he was at Burnley, I think that would also be something that England, as an FA would potentially be looking at, in terms of developing players. The way he plays football. He can do the counter-attacking football. He can do the on the front foot football, but he can also do the sit back. And he seems to be quite adaptable. That's probably what I'd say about someone like an Eddie Howe. He seems to be adaptable in his styles of play. It's not always just a one way, especially, we saw with Newcastle last season with the amount of injuries and stuff that they was getting. He had to kind of change it up, especially in certain specific games against potentially bigger teams, teams that maybe he thought, we could actually go out there and get that 3 points and stuff like that. You saw kind of a different way of playing, and which is what I always like with managers is, can you play a different way? Is it just, when I say different way, not your ethos has obviously got to remain the same. So whether that is possession based, intensity, or whatever, passing, whatever, but can you be adaptable with your formation, depending on what players you do have available? And I think, yeah, he'd be someone who might be able to do that. And I think he would come in with a bit more, obviously. Southgate has probably laid the groundwork, so to speak. So then someone who is like genuinely a good manager, a good in-game manager. I wouldn't say the best. I definitely don't think he's the best by any stretch of the imagination, but just someone with a bit more know-how, with the managerial game. He might be, really, really big, a good option, but, we'd have to wait and see. Another name that's been touted is former Chelsea and Brighton manager, and that's Graham Potter. Again, another decent choice. He's been out there, obviously after Chelsea, he's been out of the game for a little while. He'd probably make more sense, potentially, when I think, even now I'm thinking about it, he might make more sense if you're looking for a more experienced manager, someone who's managed in the Premier League, someone who plays good football. We saw the work that he done, with Brighton prior to Roberto De Zerbi coming into the football club. The way that Brighton were playing, he definitely laid that groundwork for someone like a De Zerbi to be able to come in and then, in my opinion, kind of evolve what was going on. But he had that groundwork there. The way that Brighton were playing, the passing, football that they're playing out from the back, the comfortability in possession, the ability to, build up play. The way they were building up play, it was very, very nice. That it was very easy on the eye. I liked it. I didn't mind, his style of play. Of course, then went to Chelsea. Things didn't really work out there. Am I surprised? Not really. Chelsea, in recently, them and Manchester United, two clubs that I look at and think, at this moment in time, things may change, of course. At this moment, though, you go there to just kill your career, whether it's managerial or playing staff. You just go there and kill your career, and it's not really a great place for you to be able to thrive, at this current moment in time. So, yeah, man. Of course, people are still going to judge him regardless, and they should. You know what I mean? And they should. But could he take that England job? Maybe something that's not necessarily day to day, and with the way that he plays, potentially, he's another option. If you don't want to go down that route, and as everyone keeps saying, they want an English manager, and they think an English manager, should be the manager of England. Fair enough. I'm not going to get into that. But if not, you've got Thomas Tuchel. I'd say currently, I think he's still being paid by Bayern Munich. But of course, we know, well, he's not the current Bayern Munich manager, but I'm sure he's still being paid by Bayern Munich up until a certain point. Can't remember when that is, though. But anyways, he's obviously available. Obviously, got no club at the moment. Would he be interested? I don't know. He's someone who does have different formations in the way that he plays. whether it's, playing 4 at the back, playing 3 at the back, 4 in midfield, 5 in midfield, or, the 3 up front, or the, 2 and then 1, ahead of that. He's got different ways. He definitely has different ways, of playing. Kind of in that Jurgen Klopp mold, of someone who likes to, intensity. But he can play that kind of boring football, as people like to call it. I don't know how else you want me to say it, but he can do both sides. He can do both sides. So if you're looking for if you're looking for more of a tactical manager, maybe Tuchel might be the person. He may actually be the person that you're looking for. Again, it all depends on the kind of direction of the FA at this current moment in time, in terms of what type of manager are you actually looking for, and of course, then that leads to what is then available for them. But Tuchel is definitely an option because of his availability at this current moment in time. We all know international managers are not usually the best managers in terms of how we rate them, how we rank them. Who knew who De La Fuente was, at Spain, but ultimately he's just gone and won under 19s, under 21s, and then the Euros with Spain, the Spanish national sides, so does it really matter how big of a profile these managers are? I don't think it does. I really don't think it does. But probably the biggest profile manager or former manager, and that's Jurgen Klopp. Now, this isn't going to happen. I will be beyond shocked, more shocked than if Mbappe joined Brighton. I'll be more shocked. Or just as shocked. Did you get what I'm trying to say? Purely because, I don't feel like he has that real love for England like that. I don't think he does. The media, he hates the media. We've seen the way, we've heard the exchanges with someone like Jurgen Klopp and the English media. Why would he put himself through then become the England manager, German manager? That, both him and Tuchel. Can you imagine that? A German manager winning something for England? That would be absolutely crazy. But yeah, this one is a non-starter for me. Like I said, I'll be beyond shocked. I'll be equally as shocked as if Brighton were able to have signed someone like Kylian Mbappe. Do you get what I mean? Because it's just that's the level of just outrage I would be in, and the wildness of that kind of deal. That's kind of where my head would be at. With something like that. With someone like Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, you look at his football, what he's done at Liverpool. The connection he's already got with someone like Gomez or Trent Alexander-Arnold. Some of the players that England have got. He'd bring a level of intensity to the squad. I understand why people would gravitate towards something or someone like a Jurgen Klopp. Do I think Jurgen Klopp that would work in an international management setting? I don't know. It would be interesting. It would be very, very interesting because the type of football that he likes to play does require rhythm. It's very hard to play his type of football. Trust me, I've seen it for about 8-9 years. It's very difficult trying to play that way. And you need rhythm in that kind of football. Otherwise, you don't really get to see the results. You've seen with Liverpool, once they, have like too many weeks off and stuff like that, the rhythm was all out of place. And with international football, you're always on and off. And you're off potentially for months at a time. And then players get injured, and then that player it's too difficult, I feel like, for someone like a Klopp in the way that he plays. Again, not to say that he probably wouldn't be a very good option, but I just try to think about the stylistically in terms of the way that he wants to play and what it requires in order for you to play. I mean, hopefully get less injuries. Do you know what I mean? If he was the England manager, and he'd be the best option if he was available, of course. And I guess the FA couldn't really turn down someone like a Jurgen Klopp. It would be more him turning them down. But yeah, I just see this as, a bit more of a non-starter, if I'm 100% honest. One of the last few names I got here is Lee Carsley, the under-21 manager. Of course, under-21s, they won their Euro tournament back last year, 2023. Yeah, 2023. They won that, beating Spain, funnily enough, in the final, 1-0. Had a good, of course, he had a pretty decent team, if we're being vaguely honest. I don't know if you guys can see on the screen there, the likes of the Palmers, Angel Gomez, Curtis Jones, Gibbs White, Gordon, Smith Rowe, Max Aarons, Cole Will. They had a pretty good team, if I'm being 100%, honest with you. One of the stronger teams. Again, he's got an attacking style of football. Likes to be in control in terms of dominating proceedings. But he's also, in terms of the way that I saw them play against Spain anyway, in that final, they're quite patient. They were quite a patient team. They were a team that, It didn't need to necessarily always be gung ho. They and him, of course, seem to understand the assignment. So would he be a good option? I think with someone like Lee Carsley, obviously, if you're just talking in terms of just like, it's difficult because, as I said about the De La Fuente thing, it's like, doesn't have to be anybody of high profile. And I'm not saying you have to have someone high profile, because you don't. But what he would allow for is continuation. Under 21 manager, we've had that before. Gareth Southgate works with the youth sides and stuff like that, then come up to the seniors. So the players who then come through, they know him, they know what he's about. Lee Carsley will be the exact same thing. So then it will just be really about his style of playing, his football. Would that then work with the players that you then got? Then cool, fair enough. If people think that it would, then maybe it would. I'm not going to judge that yet unless he actually comes in, and then we can take a deeper look at someone like him. But yeah, I think that's why you'd bring him in. That'd be the only reason why I think you'd bring in Carsley. Just continuation. I think it really would allow for that. And if England probably were smart, they probably would head down this kind of road, as opposed to trying to potentially source another manager, who's not really been in an England setup, doesn't really know what's really going on behind the scenes and stuff like that. Again, only if you can't get like a Jurgen Klopp, for example, and all right, cool. You know what? That's an option you just had to try and take. Because you can't take that, you know what? Let's look from within again. And then, of course, take it from there. But I think with all of these managers, that I've looked at, and all the other, Pochettino's another one that people have spoken about and stuff like that. I think with all of them, for me, as I've always said, I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter which manager for me, because I don't see it as being I don't necessarily see it all being on the manager, if I'm being totally honest with you. I think, as we've mentioned on previous streams and shows before, I've said it 100 times. It's a systemic thing, I believe, with England, in terms of their whole, Gary Neville talked about like the methodology and stuff like that. It is that. I think it always has been that. You got to understand, like, England for me are not a top nation, so to speak. You know what I mean? I think you lose that tag, regardless of the players that you have. You end up losing that tag because you're not winning anything. We wouldn't call a club, even though we seem to do in England, we don't call clubs top clubs or big clubs, and you ain't winning nothing. That's why I never understood like the Spurs stuff and things like that. I'm not saying you wipe away someone's history. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in terms of relative to now, when you're looking at it, I'm like, I don't call these clubs big clubs. Like, if you want to call them like Nottingham Forest historical clubs, yeah, but big clubs, I don't know about all that. Do you know what I mean? Like, historical is probably a better word for me when I think about your Spurs, your Nottingham Forests, and these kind of teams, Aston Villas and stuff like that. When I think of them kind of teams, I don't think these ain't no big club. Do you know what I mean? I just think, yeah, historically, yeah, they're, what I mean, they did their thing back, when Jesus was a boy. But outside of that, I don't look at these clubs and think, yeah, these clubs are, massive and, et cetera, et cetera. I can't. How can I do that? You ain't winning nothing. How can you, like, you can't keep having this tag of someone who's a big club or a big nation and you're not winning nothing? England, 1966, in terms of the men's team, 1966. I know the women's team obviously done their thing, et cetera, et cetera. Big up to them. But in terms of the men's team, a big nation to me, like, I'm sorry. Spain, Germany, Italy, France, those are big nations. Brazil, Argentina, those are, for me, the big nations in world football. That's the ones that I respect the most in terms of when I'm just looking at, right, who's a top nation, who's won things and et cetera, et cetera. I don't look at England like that, unfortunately. And I can't, because you're not winning anything. So I can't just keep saying, oh, but we've got Foden and we've got Kane and we've got Saka and we've got Rice and Carl. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter who you've got in your team, because you ain't winning nothing with these guys. So you can have all of these players. It makes no difference to me. And I just think it's just a systemic kind of thing. It's now been ingrained in their culture that because you're not of that ilk of a Spain or a Germany or France or anything like that, and you believe that, it's now just ingrained. Those countries are just seen now as just better than you when it comes to international football, right? So their players are better, whether it's technically, whether it's stronger or whatever it may be, those players are just better than you. Simple as. So because they're better than you, by default, they're always going to do better than you. It doesn't matter whether or not, you get to a final against Italy, who play one way of football, one kind of style of football, or a Spain who play a different style of football. It doesn't, the result is always going to be the same, is that England are never going to win under these current conditions until they change their whole identity thing. This is why the whole managerial situation, for me, it shouldn't actually matter. Throw in not just anybody, but you should be able to kind of just put in a Lee Carsley, and it should be absolutely no problem whatsoever. Reason being is because he's playing under the English DNA, whatever that is. I don't know what it is, because I feel like England DNA right now is just like the country. It's confused. It has no idea what their actual DNA is. You've taken so much from other cultures and things like that. You don't even have your own DNA. You don't. We want it to be like a Spain, or maybe we can play like this kind of football. Listen, don't focus on what Spain are doing. Spain do what they do the best, because that's their football. You cannot outdo them in any walk of life. It will just be impossible. You can't do that. That's fine. Regardless, and I know people are going to say, yeah, but we've got players. It doesn't matter. All of that is irrelevant. Just erase that from your thinking. Doesn't matter, guys. You as a nation, as a team, cannot outball a Spanish team. That's fine. You don't have to outball Spain. Guess what? You play your own way, whatever that might be. Direct football, your typical long balls and stuff, whatever that might be. Two up top with the big man, little man kind of thing. You mixed in with a few technical players in there. Yeah, no problem. But if that's your DNA, and again, like I said, I think England do have a problem with that DNA because they don't seem to know what it is. Once you identify what that actually is, then you'll be able to beat these kind of teams. Because again, like I said before, when we're talking about managerial and stuff like that, I kept using the Spain manager, but I guarantee if everybody went through the list of all these other managers at Euros, you wouldn't even know like 80% of these guys. You probably wouldn't even know who they are. Rangnick, you'd only know because he was the Manchester United, what do you call it, interim manager, or whatever they call it, caretaker manager. Yeah, that's the only reason why you know who Rangnick is. Otherwise, he was just a guy who was at above board level kind of guy who's just up there. You didn't know who he was, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the point. There's nothing actually wrong with that. But you don't. It doesn't matter who the manager is. Your nation needs a DNA. It needs something to say, this is our DNA. This is how we're moving forward. Now, if the DNA now is what they're talking about, which is, they want to have more technical players and do this, that, and the third, that's fine. It's going to take a minute, though, before you reach that level. A minute. Like a minute. Hence why I don't see England winning anything anytime soon. Doesn't matter what players you have. It just won't matter, because all these other countries have had their DNA. If you've seen with some of these countries who have kind of, during periods of time in the last, say, like 25 years as an example, or 24 years since the year 2000, let's just say since then, right? Some of these countries who have, like, say, fallen off, so to speak, like Brazil, it's because they lose their DNA. They've tried something different. They're trying to do something different. Instead of just going back to what they know, instead of just going back to that kind of football that the Brazilians are used to playing, because they've got so many European-based players, it's now influencing what the manager then does. And because of the way that the game is now you're not seeing the same Brazil anymore. You're not going to see that. Did you get what I'm trying to say? Germany, when they were like stinking up for a little bit, it's because they lost their way. You see it. Spain, we saw what Spain were like, the last few seasons, or the last few years, should I say, lost their way a little bit. They kind of deviated a little bit away from what they're really known for. And so, yes, I know they still do the passing 1,000 passes a game and all this kind of rubbish, of course, but just their essence, their DNA, they weren't really doing that. And that was always going to be a problem, mixed in obviously with players and the level of quality of players, of course, that these nations will potentially have at periods of time. It's a recipe for disaster. And the problem with England is they don't have that DNA. They've tried so many different ways of doing things in the last 30 years, that now we're in this kind of situation where people are like dumbfounded that, oh my goodness, how can Southgate not get the best out of these guys? This is probably the best that you're going to get out of these guys, which is two finals, a World Cup semi, quarters, all of that. He's done all of that. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, Gareth Southgate has done all of those kind of things. So maybe that was just always going to be, the best that he was going to do. So, yeah, man, I think that for me is more of a bigger problem than focusing solely on who is going to be the next England manager. I don't think it's that important who that actual manager is. Of course, I'm not saying you just go down and find some manager in the backer. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that until the FA sit down, and to be honest, we'll be just going over it again, but even if it's not the FA, like, I look at the under-21s as an example, right? And I looked at, the way that they've been playing for a minute, but let's say in the last year, watching the under-21s, obviously because Harvey Elliott and Curtis Jones have been over there. When I see them play, they do not play anything like the first team, not even remotely close. And again, I know it's under-21 football, but there still needs to be a level. Like, I watch Manchester City under-21s. They play relatively similar to the first team. Obviously, you understand context. They don't have the players. So certain things will obviously maybe look different, but the ethos is still there. The DNA is still there for what Pep Guardiola is asking them to do, for example, right? when you've got England under 21s, I don't see that. I don't see. There's no correlation there for me. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if it's because the Premier League have a, you know, in terms of the percentage. Big up Jerry, because we were speaking about this the other day, yesterday, about, you know, the percentage of actual English players in the Premier League. You know, in terms of the two best teams in the Premier League at this current moment in time, you know, Arsenal, Manchester City, the way that they play, it's not a DNA, so to speak, that England are used to, because most of their players are not English. Do you know what I mean? So you don't even have the majority of your players playing in the same one way. You've got your Carl Walkers, John Stones, Declan Rices, who else is in there? Phil Fodens. They play, obviously, say one way in terms of how Arteta and Pep Guardiola are kind of similar. Then you've got Jude Bellingham over at Madrid. They do whatever it is they do. Now you've got Harry Kane, who's been doing what he's been doing at Spurs, then gone to Bayern. He plays a completely different way. You've got Trent Alexander-Arnold. He plays a completely different way. You've got Luke Shaw at Manchester United, plays a different way. You've got, you know, it's obviously Bukayo Saka, another one of those players. I just feel like Anthony Gordon, Eze, you know, all of these guys, they all seem to play a different kind of style of football. There isn't just like this one way that the majority of teams play, if that makes sense, where you can say, oh, okay, the majority of teams play this way, and because the majority of our players are coming from this team, now we can play this kind of football. Then you can say fair enough. So if it is the Pep Guardiola way in terms of whatever, fairs, cool. If that's the way that you want to play, that's the way that you want to play. It's going to still be a B-Tech version, but cool, that's the way that you want to kind of keep doing things, right? That's cool. But when Eze don't play that, and Wharton don't play that, and Mainu don't play that, and Shaw don't play that, and Trippier don't play that, and Trent doesn't play that, and Anthony Gordon doesn't play that, and bro, like, what do you expect to see? I don't get it. Like, what is everyone expecting to see? I get it. We want to see better football, and they should have been better football. But I'm sorry, you got too many guys who play too many different styles of play. You're trying to literally mesh all of that together. It ain't gonna work, big man. It ain't gonna work, man. It ain't gonna work. So I think that for me is the key. It's trying to find that one way of playing, but whatever that DNA is. Like I said, it's whatever I think with English players. I know now with some of these young players coming through, they're more technical and stuff like that. I get it. Maybe that is the way that you kind of want to go. Fairs. Let's see how that kind of works out. But if the majority of the players are not playing that way, you will struggle. You will struggle, man. And that's where I have a problem with England. It isn't so much, like I said, about what manager. You could have had Gareth Southgate version of, you know, manager come into the nation and, you know, manage this team. But if he's playing different football than what certain players are playing at under 21 levels, like is Adam Wharton or Kobe Mainu or Jude Bellingham when he was there, and all these guys, are they playing the same way? No, they're not playing this. They're playing completely differently. It's like a whole different style that they're playing. But then you come up to the first team and now it's all slow and it's possession here and it's, you know, moving the ball at like 1 mile an hour, like per hour. And I'm sitting there thinking, Jesus. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, it's just all crazy. So I think England sort that out, then the manager can be whoever they want it to be. Once they do sort that out. But if not, doesn't matter. We can go through, you know, Potter, Howe, Carsley, Tuchel, Klopp, Pochettino, go through all of these guys. I promise you the results will be the same. But either way, guys, let me know in the comment section, who would you like to see as the England manager? And is it just, and another question actually, is it just as simple as just picking the next England manager, or do you think England do need to change things systemically? Let me know, of course, in the comment section, people. We out.